Welcome to the Rocker Skating Podcast. It is the couple of days before Finlandia Trophy, and I am here with a special emergency episode of the Rocker Skating Podcast for you. And we're going to talk about Grand Prix final scenarios. So uh, stay tuned because this is going to be a numbers and maybe a little bit of nerding out of a lot of stuff. Luckily, for a couple of these disciplines, where it's fairly straightforward. For a couple of these disciplines, however, it is a different kind of story. But let's get into it. So, I'm going to do a little bit of a primer for you all. If you are not familiar with the Grand Prix scenarios, I guess the qualification criteria. So for those of you who have been part of this whole thing, there are 6 Grand Prix events. That's to the surprise of none of you. But each skater and or team is able to be in a maximum of 2 competitions during the Grand Prix. And the points that they accumulate are based on their placements. So first place gets 15 points, second place gets 13 points, third place gets 11 points, and so on and so forth. And the two numbers, right, of your placements will be added up to get to a total that determines the Grand Prix final field, right? So, for example, Ilya Malinin won both of his events, and so he gets 15 and 15, which means he has a total of 30 points. So 30 points is the maximum that you could get, and the top 6 based on those numbers will get to the final. If there is a tie, and I'm going to make this a fairly simplified version, if there is a tie, there are really 2 tiebreakers that are often mostly used. The likelihood of it going beyond that is so minor. But basically, what happens is that if you're tied with the number of placement points, then the first tiebreak is the highest placement of either of your Grand Prix. So if you got a first and second, your tie-breaking placement would be first. And so if both of the skaters or multiple of the skaters or teams have the same first tiebreak, then they go to a second tiebreak. The second tiebreak is then the combination of the total scores for the 2 competitions that they were in. And as you can imagine, the chances of the 2 total scores for 2 different skaters or 2 different teams adding up to exactly the same are so small. I don't think I've ever seen them go to a third tiebreaker. So for all intents and purposes, that's how it works. Very quick, very easy. But the scenarios going into the final Grand Prix are less easy. So let's talk about some of these different scenarios. And we're going to start with the men, because the men are probably the easiest to go with. And so here it is. So for the men, you've got Ilya Malinin with 30 points, Shun Sato with 28 points, Mikhail Shadurov with 24 points. That is as clear cut as it gets for the top 3. You'll notice that 24 points for Shadurov already gets him into the final, which is very rare at this time of the Grand Prix, right? Because oftentimes, you have to kind of wait until a 24 or sometimes even a 26 can get through. But because there was so much crazy movement and so many different kinds of performances that happen and the menning that has happened over the first 5 Grand Prix, Shadorov gets into the final. There's nobody else who can. There aren't more than 3 skaters who can overtake him at Finlandia, and so therefore he gets in already. And so what happens then is we look at then the next 3. So 3 more will get in, and what you'll see in Finlandia Trophy is Yuma Kagiyama, Adam Xiaohua, and Jason Brown, the three who still have a chance at getting on, a realistic chance at getting on to the Grand Prix final roster. And among those three, the two that are in very high consideration, right, are Yuma Kagiyama and Adam Xiao. Now Yuma has a 15 coming in, and so he only needs sixth place or higher to get into the Grand Prix final. And Adam, with the 13 points coming in, only needs a fifth place or higher to get into the Grand Prix final. Simple as that. Nothing else. It's just there is not much to it, and if Yuma is not fifth or sixth or higher, or if Adam is not fifth or higher, something went terribly wrong. So the chances of the two of them getting into the final are fairly high. For Jason Brown, however, it then gets to be a different kind of a ball game. So it really is, assuming that Yuma and Adam make it in, the sixth and final spot will be up between Jason Brown and Daniel Grassel. And so for Jason Brown, he needs a silver medal in order to get into the finals. So because that will give him 13 points here. So 13 plus 9 equals 22. 22 overtakes Daniel Grassel for that sixth spot. If he gets bronze, he gets 11 points. So 11 plus 9 gets him into a tie with Daniel Grassel. But because Grassel had a silver medal from Cup of China, that will break the tie for that sixth spot. So the only way, assuming again that Yuma and Adam get into the final, for Jason to get into the final is for him to either win or get silver. It is not out of the realm of possibility. We have seen crazier things before, but he's going to have to skate a lot better than he did this past week at Skate America, in order to get to that final. So that's the men. Very easy. There are, the likes of Kazuki Tomono and Lukasz Bryczki will not make it to the final. They'll probably be substitutes. They are mathematically still in it, but it would basically require like a Yuma and an Adam and a Jason to either completely implode or withdraw or any of that kind of stuff in order for them to get in, knowing the point totals that we currently have. So that's the men, and that is a fairly quick and easy kind of a scenario. We're going to go to another quick and easy scenario, which is the pairs. And so for the pairs, we've got, let's see here, we have got 4 of the 6 spots that have been taken care of already. So Mira Kihara, Conti Machi, Metelkina Barulva, Stellato Deschamps. You'll notice here that it took 28 points for the pairs to get an automatic in mathematically automatic in before the final competition. And this is a sign that the same people are getting gold or silver throughout the first 5 Grand Prix, and that's what you see here. And the next one, right, is Pavlova and Sviatchenko. So the 3 teams really that are the most likely to be vying for those last 2 spots are Hasse-Volodin, who come in with 13 points. And so they basically need to be first or second in order to guarantee themselves a spot into the Grand Prix final. So first place would get them 28 points, that's in. Second place would get them 26 points, that's in. Third place, however, would then require them to be tied with Pavlova Sviatchenko, and then that would require them to have a tiebreak. And so they would have to win the tiebreak based on the total scores from the 2 competitions in order to get in. They have a bit of an advantage over Pavlova Sviatchenko already in the first competition. So they would probably, if they get bronze, be favored to get that tiebreak, unless they also somehow implode and the rest of the field sort of implodes. So that's Hassevolden. Now, then the interesting thing is, again, if Hassevolden does what they typically do, and gets gold or silver, the interesting one will be between Pavlova Sviatchenko and Cameron O'Shea. Now, Pavlova Sviatchenko, they've already done their stuff. There's nothing they can do about anything. But wait, Cam and O'Shea have to get a silver in order to get themselves eligible to kind of be in the running, right? Again, assuming that Hassevolden gets one of those spots. So, if Cam and O'Shea get the silver, they get 24 points. They are tied with Pavlova Sviatchenko, and then they would have to win the tiebreak. And so they need a 200.94 or higher in order for them to win that tiebreak. And so, in a lot of ways, Pavlova Sviatchenko, when they got silver at NHK Trophy with that, I think it was a 206 or 207, that helped them quite a bit, and it gives them an edge here for that Grand Prix final spot. Cam and O'Shea breaking 200 would be a really big score for them. But that's also to say, if they get silver here, given the field, it is likely that they will have a fairly high score. So we'll see how that goes. So my take is that basically Pavlova Sviatchenko have the edge over Cam and O'Shea at this point. It's basically up to Cam and O'Shea to put out a great performance. Gold, by the way, for Cam and O'Shea, and they are automatically in. So those are the most likely three. Now, the less likely, but also there's a chance that could happen, right, is for Nagaoka and Moriguchi to get into the final. And for them to do that, they have to win. There are other scenarios, weird scenarios, where they don't win and they they get silver and they get in. For example, if they no, actually, no, I take that back. Yeah. So, so for Nagaoka Moriguchi, if they take silver, they get 22 points. And so that means that Hassevolden and Cam and O'Shea have to finish behind Nagaoka and Moriguchi. And so there are lots of weird scenarios. So, for example, like Zhang and Huang wins, and Nagaoka Moriguchi gets second, and Cam and O'Shea gets third, and Hassevolden gets fourth. That gets them in. But that is not the likely scenario. The most likely scenario, it is still low probability, is that Nagaoka Moriguchi win the whole thing, and that gives them 24 points and the tiebreak over Pavlova Sviatchenko. And so there is a narrow path for Nagaoka Moriguchi to get there, but it is not a high probability path. So that's pairs. Now, we're going to get to the more interesting ones here, which are the women and the ice dance, which if you know figure skating Grand Prix and you say, hey, dance is going to be the most interesting out of all of them for Grand Prix final spots, nobody would believe you. So let's get to the women first. So for the women, we have 3 of the 6 spots that have been taken care of: Karim Sakamoto, Alyssa Liu, and Ami Nakai. And so there are a couple things that are of interest here, right? One is obviously those who are currently in here. And so if you look at the list, Monet Chiba and Amber Glenn comes in. They both come in with 15 points with their win at Skate Canada for Monet Chiba and at Cup of China for Amber Glenn. And so all they need to do is get 4th or higher in order to get into the final. That's a very doable thing, and that's why their spot is fairly likely. But there are other scenarios again that gets sort of in the way, but those are lower probability scenarios. Now, if they do that, um, that also means then that Rinka Watanabe then, because they would lose the tiebreak, say Amber Glenn and Monet Chiba, one of those gets fourth place, they get 9 points. 9 plus 15 gets you 24. That ties them with Rinka, but it also, because both of them come in with a win, they get the first tiebreak over Rinka Watanabe. So that's why, like, it is always great to come in with a win, because the win really gets all of those tie breaks kind of out of the way. So that's for Monet Chiba and Aberglen. The next three really who are sort of like fighting for those spot, that final spot, assuming that Monet Chiba and Amber Glenn are in, are Rinka, Rion Sumiyoshi, and Luna Hendricks. Now, Luna Hendricks is, of the three, the lowest scenario probability, or probability scenario, because of the points that she brings in, right? Luna Hendricks basically needs to win in order to get into the final. If she gets second, she will likely lose a tiebreak to Rinka Watanabe, because she brings in a 199 from NHK Trophy, and Rinka Watanabe has a fairly high total score, and so it would require that to happen. Rion Sumiyoshi, she brings in a 216 from her bronze at that crazy Grand Prix de France, and so she actually would then, if she gets silver here, have a potential potential advantage over a Rinka Watanabe. A silver amongst this field will likely be in the 200s, and so Rion Sumiyoshi has a higher probability than a Luna Hendricks to win the tiebreak. So that is where that goes. Now, if either of them end up getting bronze, right? If neither of them gets gold or silver, they're basically out of the running. A lot can happen, because it really kind of depends on how all of these skaters then stack up against each other. There are lots of different scenarios, because there are so many skaters who are still in play, including the potential of a Brady Tennell win, which would then vault her up to 24 points, which would break the tie with Rinka Watanabe. And then the rest of the kind of skaters, right, if Monet Chiba and Amber Glenn would then have to kind of slot in there. But if Brady wins, right, the only two people who can overtake her are Monet Chiba and Amber Glenn, and so that gets her into the final. Low probability. I mean, we've seen Brady Tennell be good on the Grand Prix before, so it's not a complete out of the box sort of scenario here. So that is the women. Now, there are people who are like, but what about Sofia Samodelkina? Yes. At this point, as far as I know, and I really should have done my complete research before I gotten into this, because I didn't take a look at this before. But as far as we know, Sofia Samodelkina was invited to Finlandia Trophy, and I'm checking again right now, and I do not see her on the list. So the last that we heard was that she was awaiting a visa, and it is Tuesday night, and the competition starts on Friday. So there is still a chance that Sofia Samodelkina can get to Finlandia Trophy for this event. But if she does, she brings in 13 points with her silver medal. That completely shakes everything up, and I am not going to go into that right now because that would basically be a whole reset of what the scenarios actually look like. So stay tuned to see if Sophia Samodelkina ends up throwing a whole wrench into this whole thing. All right, let's go to the ice dance. Now, ice dance, crazily enough, only 2 of the 6 spots for the ice dance Grand Prix final have been taken. Chalk and Bates and Fear and Gibson with 30 points and 28 points. They've gotten through. The crazy thing is we've got 4 more spots at this point in the Grand Prix series. Usually we have kind of like what you saw with the pairs. You usually have 4, likely 4 of the spots already taken, and then the last 2 are fairly certain who's going to take them. This time around, kind of a different story. But what we see here is Fournier, Baudry, Cicerone, and Gilles Poirier both coming in with a win, so 15 points from their respective Grand Prix. They then become fairly heavy favorites, especially given how ice dance goes, to get to the Grand Prix final. They need basically a 4th or higher in order to get to the final, and that is a very, very, very likely scenario. The second one to look at is Reed and Amberlevicius, who come in with 24 points from their 2 Grand Prix, and they win the tiebreak over Lejoie Lega. And so all of that is to say that assuming Fournier, Baudry, Cicerone, and Gilles Poirier end up doing what they do, which would be a 1-2 in some order, they will then overtake Reed and Amberlevicius for kind of those points, and then they are now in the 5th spot. Now, the next likely scenario then goes to Zingis Kolesnik versus Lejoie Lega for that final spot. And so Zingis Kolesnik basically would need to be at least in the bronze medal position. And if they get bronze here, they get 24 points. They will tie Lejoie Lega. There's a even likelihood that they overtake Reed and Amberlevicius based on the point total. They come in with a very high point total. They come in with, was it 202 from their silver at Cup of China. And so the likelihood that they then get the tiebreak over Lejoie and Lega is very high. Now, Zingis Kolesnik is not guaranteed to be in the bronze medal spot because you've got Spartan Dijk, who could very well figure out a way to get there, right? Like they have seen international success before, and if they end up getting the bronze and Zingis Kolesnik end up getting 4th place, then Lejoie Lega get into the final. So there's a lot of that going on. I think the spoiler there is likely going to be Smart Dijk, and then Smart Dijk has a very low chance of getting, well, basically impossible for them to get into the Grand Prix final, but they can spoil the placements going into the Grand Prix final. All right, so that was Grand Prix final scenarios for 2025-2026 season. There's lots to come this week for Finlandia Trophy. I'm sure everybody will be on their edge of their seats, including the skaters that we had just talked about. Michelle and I will be here tomorrow to do our Finlandia Trophy preview. So join us at 8 p.m. Eastern, as always, to listen in on what will be an interesting final Grand Prix of the season before the Grand Prix final. All right. Well, talk to you soon. Bye.